In chapter 20, we take a little bit of a break from intense paradigm learning. As far as new material, don't take a break in learning the paradigm, keep memorizing that. But we're not going to throw any new paradigm material at you. Chapter 20, we're going to look at what's called the Vav consecutive. The Vav consecutive is a Vav on the front of a word, either a perfect or imperfect tense, that helps to just determine the flow of a narrative in Hebrew. So what Hebrew will often do is start a narrative with the tense that it intends to use, usually a perfect because we're talking about historical material. So usually you will start a narrative in the perfect, but then to continue the perfect, what Hebrew will do is put a Vav consecutive onto an imperfect form. And what that does is it in essence changes the tense of the imperfect to a past. It seems kind of bizarre to us. Why not just continue with the perfect? But in fact, this is just kind of how Hebrew works. And so, again, we're trying to describe what Hebrew does rather than tell it what to do. And so what we have to look at is the Vav consecutive on an imperfect is translated as a past. So we do that. On the flip side, if Hebrew wants to talk about a future narrative, it will start the narrative with an imperfect. Then it will continue the narrative with a Vav consecutive attached to a perfect. That then makes the meaning of the perfect, rather than simple past, it changes the meaning of the perfect to a future, just like the imperfect. So the Vav consecutive, in essence, flips the tense of whatever verbal form is on, but we have to be able to recognize if it's a Vav consecutive or if it is just a conjunctive Vav. And part of how we do that is it looks a little different. If you'll notice the form, I've got from the textbook here the form of these. If we're looking at past time and we're going to be adding the Vav consecutive onto an imperfect form, it's going to attach like the article. So notice in this example here we have the Vayiktol. The Vav has the Patach with the Dagesh in the what we'd typically say the R1 for the article, but here it's the prefixed element of the imperfect, the Yod. So it looks like the article. Notice also, if you remember with the article, if we have a guttural in this position, we're going to get rejection and compensatory lengthening. Indeed, that's what we get with the 1CS, the only imperfect form with a guttural. But if it's going to have a Vav consecutive on it, that is what it's going to look like right there. I don't mean to be writing all over the page. My stylus is not working again. That's okay. So there's the form of the Vav consecutive on an imperfect. For future time, in order to put the Vav consecutive on the perfect, it's going to attach just like the Vav conjunctive. If you remember the Vav conjunctive attached like the inseparable prepositions. So notice here we have vekatalti, mashalti with those boom off letters, right? There's that one. Ketaltim. So this is a Vav consecutive on a perfect. That's not a conjunctive Vav. Sometimes context will have to tell you, but again, once we get into some translations, the context will make it clear. And or if you choose the wrong option, the translation just won't make sense. There's the form of the Vav consecutive. Again, the meaning of the Vav consecutive, you can read this in your textbook, but basically it just flips the meaning of what was there. Namely, if it's an imperfect, or if if it's an imperfect and has the Vav consecutive, it becomes a past tense translation. Flip side, if it's a perfect form with a Vav consecutive, then it translates as a future. And again, this is just the way Hebrew writes narrative. The Vav consecutive on the imperfect is what you'll see most of the time, but you can rarely see a Vav consecutive on a perfect. So pretty light chapter there. Let me know if you have any questions about that.